Hi, it's Lyle from Made by Marley, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make an amazing piece of Easter decor out of just some bits and pieces and some cheap stuff using loads of IOD moulds. So I got this at, I'm trying to think, I bought this in the UK at a place called Home Bargains, which is kind of cheap items. I think maybe you might find things like this in like Walmart or Dollar General if you're in America. But it's one of those, if you can see, it's got the fuzzy texture on it. So we're going to have to try and deal with that. And we're going to take off his bows. We don't need any of that just now. So you can get rid of all that. And the second thing you need is a sort of plinth, a box, or something fancy that you want to turn into your piece of Easter decor. Now, I got this old jewellery box. It's already had a coat of paint, but that's good. That's going to work in my favour because I'm going to kind of do it this sort of colour. So I'm not bothered about that. It's got, it's not the best, but it's got the little drawers which I'm going to fix and everything, and we'll do this as we go along. And we're going to cover our bunny in moulds, and we're going to mount them on top of here, and we're going to do lots of different things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on our bunny. So I'm just going to put this to the side, and then you can just focus on what it is I'm doing now. I'll give you a rundown first of all of some of the moulds that I've done just off camera. I need to put my glasses on for that. So I used Classic Elements, Fleur de Lis, Trimmings 2, I think this is, yeah, Trimmings 2, Laurel, He Loves Me, Harper, the Lock and Key mould, and the Fabulous New Frames mould. Now, if you only have one mould and you're just starting out with IOD products, that's fine. You can probably do it with just one mould. I just happen to have these, and in fact, I didn't use every mould that I have, but you could use the New Roses mould, the Sunflower mould, whatever mould you want. This is what you can. These are the ones that I kind of chose from. So our bunny, because he's got this fuzzy texture, and I want my moulds to stick on him, I was trying to work out a way to try and combat this from the beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover him in some glue. You could use, I think, any kind of glue you want. I'm using Mod Podge, but it doesn't really matter. And all you're going to do is, and I think I might have to get myself a bigger brush, is you're just going to paint the whole bunny. And this is going to take me some time with this size of brush, just to kind of give them a little bit of tooth for when you put your mould on. Paint them nice and thick in all the joins. Now, if you have you can buy paper mache forms of rabbits and things. If you have something like that, you don't need to bother with that. It's just that to try and get rid of this sort of fuzzy texture, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go away off camera, and I'm going to cover the whole of our bunny with glue, just so that I can apply my moulds. So he's been all covered in glue, and now he's gone from being fluffy to kind of rough. He's still a little bit wet, but I think that's going to work in my favour. So that's how he looks so far. Now to the fun bit. I'm just going to sit him here just now. I've rolled some clay out, and I rolled it with some corn flour under it so it wouldn't stick. And I'm going to use the Toile stamp, and I'm just gonna go over the whole thing like that. This is going to be the inside of his ears, so kind of gently pull it off like that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of show you how I'm going to do the inside of the ears. I'm just going to kind of roughly do the sort of shape of the inside of the ear, and we can alter it as we go. I just want to see whether that's going to be there or thereabouts, and I think it's maybe a little bit big, so I'm just going to give it a wee trim off. I have lots of fancy clay tools, but unfortunately I'm using something that's maybe not the best. So Yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our glue. Now this is just a no nails type of glue. Depending where you are in the world, you'll know what kind of glue works best for doing this. I quite like a rough acrylic brush like this because what it does is it kind of gives it a little bit of tooth when it goes to stick. And make sure you get it right to the outer edges. It doesn't matter if it kind of goes right on the edge at this point because we're going to be putting moulds around it. So get it back in position. Now you don't want to be pushing because you don't want to lose too much of your definition on your where you've stamped it, but you give it a bit of a push down. So that's the inside of his ear done. And I'm kind of like lightly pushing and pushing here. Now I'll do the other one in a minute, but before I do that I just want to show you what I've got here. I spent quite a bit of time before I started filming casting lots of moulds. Now, I don't advise you do this first. I advise that you cast them and put them on, cast them and put them on. But for the sake of this video, it would have taken me all day to do this, so I just did a whole load of different ones, and let's just see what happens as we go. So, we've got our ear, and I think I've decided kind of that these are going to go round the ear like this. So I need one for each side. I kind of roughly looked at the shape, and when I cast my moulds I kind of decided what moulds were going to kind of go where roughly, and then I thought I'll just fill in the gaps as I go since I'm not doing it, oops, as I go. Making sure you get your glue right to the edge. This is the really messy part, but it's fine once you've got past this messy part. And really, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover the whole of the rabbit in moulds. And if there's any gaps, we'll worry about that when we paint it. Now, I think I'm going to put this edge and this edge at the top. So round we go with this. And I'm going to just pat that. Just using my nail. You don't want to over pat things because you'll lose the definition in your moulds as you do it. So that's one side done, and put this one on here and kind of shape it in the same way and get, now I can't see this side because of the way we're filming, but I'll turn it round towards myself in a minute. If we do this and just make sure, just making sure that these, and they touch up at this end. I'm going to put a little dab of glue just up here, just to make sure that that's adhered properly. So that's how I'm going to do the ear. I think we'll start and we'll do this part here. So I'm going to try and sit him like this just now, just for the sake of kind of like filming. And I thought that this mould here would be quite a good one for this area here. So again, I'm just going to try and get a bit of workspace. Plenty of glue. Actually, I've got to tell the truth, Martin cast quite a lot of my moulds before I started, and I do actually have two of these, and he wasn't happy with this one because it's got a little bit of a hole in it, and he cast me he actually made me another one that hasn't got a hole in it, but I've obviously chosen the one with the hole, so he'll be saying after, oh, why did I bother? And we're putting that. Now this is why I'm saying this is starting to kind of crust up a bit now, so really you need to do them when you're doing them. That's about the mould. Yeah, like that. And where am I going next with this? I think the next thing I'm going to do is fill in this part here while I've got them at this sort of angle. And I think I might do this one here. So you can see what I'm doing. It's not like, you know, it's not particularly difficult. You just have to, you know, whatever surface you're working on, I probably like, you know, cast as I go. Look at the area you've got to do it and pick a mould that fits. But as I said, this is a little bit kind of the wrong way to be kind of maybe working, but And any little gaps like this we'll worry about at the end. Now, I kind of want these indentations here because this is the bit that gives it the definition for his feet. But if we do something down his feet, which I'm thinking probably something like this around the edges of his feet. I'll just try it to see how that looks. Yeah, I think I'm going to do these along here. If there's bits that you're stuck on, you can always stamp those areas. Like more glue. Like that. And that's just going to sit in that. I want it to kind of sit it down in the groove, which is going to give this area here definition. Make sure your glue's right to the edges of your moulds. And down in the groove. There, like that. Now feet, I'm thinking it's just like a jigsaw puzzle, you know, that moulds are starting to crack a wee bit, but that's okay. This is going to have a kind of antique look at the end, so I'm just going to fill that with some glue there and give it a little bit of a smooth off. So I'm going to keep going and do a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you where we're at next, and then I'll do the next sort of part a little bit on camera, because if not, you're going to be watching this quite, you know, it's quite a boring process right now. So I won't do anything too complicated. I'll just fill in other areas while we're off camera. But that's how he looks so far, and that's how his ear looks, and that's his front. So you get the sort of general gist of where I'm going with this. Yeah? So we're at this sort of what I'd class the midway point. I just want to let you have a close-up look at where we've done. Now this hasn't taken incredibly long, and I'm sure if you were doing it at home you'd make sure it's perfect. Now I've got top tips. I've tried both ways now. The moulds that I had been sitting for a while cracked a bit. So what I did with those is I just filled them with glue as I was going along and just rubbed it on and filled in the cracks. I'm going to do some of these as well, but I do want some of the cracks in the overall sort of finish, so I'm okay with that. But the really new stuff, which these have just been cast and these are really fresh, these are too soft to squeeze onto the piece to give it that sort of push. So you really are looking like a happy medium, not too hard and not too soft. And I'm just going to carry on, and I'm going to show you, I've been using this little bead mould from the Chimney 2 as my sort of filler. So I've been kind of measuring how many dots I need, just pulling it apart, popping some glue on, and then just putting it into the gap like that. And that's how I've been filling my little gaps. So I reckon there's probably maybe 3 and 2 to fill this gap. I'll just get some more glue and just put my 3 in, and then my 2. And that's how I've just been filling up. And there's one here that I can put just one in. There. And that's what I've been doing. I've just been filling in my gaps as I've gone along. I'm going to have some bigger gaps here where I think I'll just fill them up this mould as well. But I just want to talk about his paws. I put hearts there, and then what I did was I got a sharp item and I just went like that, just to give him, you know, that sort of paw look, like he's got some claws. That was there, and I just rolled a little nose. And actually what I did with the nose was I actually rubbed this on it to give it a bit of texture, but it keeps kind of springing back. But we'll see what happens when we paint him. And all the ears have been done, and underneath of the ears have been done as well. So I think I'm going to carry on. I think his kind of front is the majority. Like there's some gaps, but I'm not, if you can see here, you know, there's some gaps, but I'm not going to crazy worry about these. I'll fix those when it comes with the paint. but the majority of all of the front is complete. And if you see any bits lifting, just give it a push down, and just make sure that it's all pretty secure. So I'm going to crack on, and I'm going to do a little bit more. I've still got under here still to do. So I thought maybe I've been also like getting some of the moulds and just cutting them in half, you know, like cutting them in half and putting them on like in halves, you know, if I needed half. Now, as I said, some of these are getting a little bit dry, so I was just kind of rubbing some of the glue in just to seal. You don't want to take away the detail, but it does seal your cracks. So say I wanted to put this half piece maybe down here, you can just put a half in if you wanted to. You can half them, you can break them up, you can put them in a row, you can put them on top of one another, and it's just about filling out the whole rabbit. And considering this cheap rabbit was only, I think, £4.50, like sort of British cost, and by the time we get him all done, put on the jewellery box and everything else, it really is going to make quite a statement. So he's all covered in moulds, and as I said, I filled in all the little gaps with lots of bits and pieces. He's not, you know, crusty really yet, so I don't want to pick him up too much, but this is what he looks like kind of from all sides. This is the back. I'll put them in one more time. So that's what it looks like. Now, how are we going to incorporate this on top of our box and make it into a statement? What I'm going to talk about first is, this makes me laugh, I don't know why. I'm going to put mine on the box in a sort of jaunty angle, but what I've done here is I've put two of the crown moulds together to make it, and smoothed it out at the bottom. And I think I'm going to turn him into a her, and maybe do something kind of jaunty like this using the trimmings, and put a hat on, because Martin was saying he liked him just as he is, but I think more is always more. So I think I'm going to do something like this. And he's laughing. So, but we'll set those to the side right now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the box. So if I can just gently kind of pick up a rabbit and sit it there. Now, the reason why I had the Harper mould, I just hit it. I just hit it with the chopping board. The reason why I had the Harper mould out was because I cast this, and I'm going to put this on before I mount my rabbit onto my box and everything. I'm going to just close the lid on this with its blocky. Right, let's close that shut. I am going to put these on here because this is all going to get another whole coat of paint, but before I mount it and have him kind of unstable while he's drying, I thought I'd put my words on here and I'd work out what I was going to do next. So I've attached my wording onto my box. Now, you saw me doing the clean up there. Don't worry about it. This is going to be painted, and it's actually going to be painted again, so I'm not too worried. It's just really important that you get a kind of rough, maybe acrylic brush, and just get into all the parts of your mould like that, just so that the detail really pops. And I just use a little bit of hot water just to get the really strong glue off of it, just so that it's not all hanging about. It was a pretty rough surface anyway, so I'm going to do a lot more things to this, but we've done that part now, and we're going to go on to mounting the bunny onto the top, because once the bunny's mounted, we're going to let it dry until it's really quite crusty, because before we put any paint to it. So we've got our box, and now we're going to mount our bunny. Now this is going to be quite difficult because there's a surface that goes like this. So we need to build up here and we need to build up here. And it doesn't really matter how that happens because we're going to cover it. So I'm just going to kind of get my sort of position in, which I think is probably going to go a little bit like that. That's going to be my overall positioning. So this is why I'm saying you have to be quite careful with it at this point. So I'm going to need to fill under here, and I'm going to need to fill under here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some markers here and here, and then I'm going to lift them off and we'll build up from there. So lift it gently at this point because remember it's still pretty soft. And the trick to this is absolutely, and I mean absolutely, tons of glue. So we are going to do something like this. I can hear an intake of Martin's breath at the glue situation, because you need the glue to sandwich the bunny down, and then you need this to come down here to start gluing on where your fillers are going to be. So do something like this. Don't worry about the surface, we're going to make it look pretty, but we just need to kind of build it up with some paper clay, but with plenty of glue. And that should hopefully kind of build up pretty good surface area for him to sit on. Now remember, where you've put the paper clay, you need to also have a really good helping of glue over the top of this. And now we're gonna try him next, see how she's going to be a she, how she sits. And I can see that she's good at this side, and I can see she's good at this side, and I'm going to be building this side up here. But what I will do, just because I can, is make sure you get plenty of glue on everything. Is I'm going to just do this. I think the back's good. Now, I think I'm kind of liking where she is there. So what I'm going to...
Okay, so the process of building her up, gives the piece security on top of the box, but also it makes it look pretty. So what I'm doing is I'm applying the heavy duty glue and moulds and some old salvage pieces of egg that I've kind of cut up to make them look cracked, just off of old Décor, which I'm going to glue in between things. I'm putting a little bit of that sort of BD mould from the Elements mould around the top of that egg just to finish it off. So that's all I'm doing in that part, and I'm just kind of deciding where everything's going to go. I'm keep on adding bits of clay and lots of... It's the secret to this, to make it really secure, making sure that all the glue is stuck to whatever you're putting down. And I'm just kind of looking at the gaps on top of the box and where I can put other things. So I'm kind of like packing underneath her there with some clay, and then what I'm taking is some other really kind of well glued pieces of clay to jam in the eggs to make sure that they're stuck to the top of the piece. And then that's me putting another piece of clay in, just kind of like underneath that, and I'm gluing another piece so that I can add more moulds. It's just what moulds I had left over. Now I'm making little carrots, and what I'm doing is I'm bending the carrot with a sort of point at the end, and I'm sandwiching some clay in from behind because it's going to be sitting forward so you won't actually see this, and I'm turning it into a little carrot shape, just so that I can paint these off as being carrots. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of like finishing it off at the top like a little carrot, and I'm using some sort of parts of some faux greenery that I had, and I'm putting some glue on those to stick in the top of the little carrots. And I just used the trimmings to mould to make the little carrots. I'm adding the greenery now so that the glue has a chance to kind of stick, and I'm just kind of having a little bit of back and forwards deciding on my positioning, because the positioning of this is important, so I want to cover up a little bit more of that. I'm not going to go right to the edges with my moulds, and I want to make sure that the carrot's quite visible, so I'm kind of building it up at the back so that it kind of sits like a carrot, because you can't see the back, you're only going to see the front, and that's one of the carrots done. So I'm kind of turning it round, and I'm filling in any bits that I'm not happy with. I'm packing it in with lots of clay and lots of glue, because you really want this to be secure. Although the rabbit itself isn't heavy because it's hollow on the inside, all this clay and everything that's onto the piece now is making it heavy. I'm going to make another carrot here. So I'm just kind of covering the top of my box with glue and sticking down more flower moulds over the top of my box before I put my carrot down, and I'm layering them over the top of one another. I'm going to stick an egg on there, so again more glue and a little bit of wedge of clay and my egg, and obviously I'm kind of going around that, making sure that I don't have any sort of nasty pieces that you can see. Covering it up with a mould, packing it from the back so it's totally secure. And this is me finishing off my other little carrot, gluing the tops and sticking in my greenery so that it hardens that way. And obviously more glue again, making sure it's well glued at the back and making sure that my greenery is glued in. And now I'm thinking of the positioning for this carrot, and I'm deciding that they both look a bit the same, so I'm gluing it, and I'm going to turn the carrot round. I think that's me turning the carrot round to make sure that it's not the same as on the other side. And literally what we're kind of doing here is I'm just kind of, you're getting a shot of what it looks like all the way around. Going to turn it round and just make sure from all sides and all angles that it looks good. And this is me finishing off her lovely little hat that I was so desperate to put on her at a jaunty angle using 2 crown moulds glued together and plenty of glue and one of the flower moulds, just to give her her little crown. And that's it.
So the the moulds have got a little bit of a crust to them. It's still pretty soft, but I'm going to forge on and paint it. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to start painting this, because I actually wanted the box this colour originally. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start just gently. I mean, I don't need to be too gently on these, but I definitely do on the rabbit. And I'm just painting around all of here where I put this, the moulds on, the words. Now this is going to have like a wash over the top of it. So this is putting it back to normal, just putting everything back to the same colour. And obviously where I put the glue as well is really important. So I'm going to do this, and probably we'll just fast forward this section because it's a little bit like watching paint dry. So we'll do this and then we'll get on to painting our moulds. So what I've chosen to do is to paint in the moulds in this sort of pink colour. I'm going to do a white wash over the top of the pink. Now it's got a bit of a crust, but it's still quite wet. So I'm going to be quite ginger and gentle with it as I paint it, but still trying to keep the relief into it at the same time. I have watered down my paint a little bit, but I think maybe it could do with just a little bit, maybe a wee bit more water, but we'll see.
So I just go round the whole thing. First of all, I'm painting the rabbit pink, making sure that I get in all the sections, making sure that I haven't missed any parts, using a small brush. Then I go on to paint the base and the top of the box with a green colour, and I go all the way around and I do all of that with a sort of light green colour that I've mixed up. All the way, painting all the flowers, and I paint around the edges of the box as well to make it look like the surface area is going all the way around, and I do that with the green too, right to the edges. And I then do it on every side, and then I mix up an orange paint once I've painted all the greenery and the base green, and I paint the carrots in orange, both carrots, just to finish them off, just to give it different interest. Don't worry about the eggs right now, they're going to be painted later. Get in all the sections and there's no other of the glue or the moulds or anything white showing on it. going right under the eggs, and that's me painting the eggs in white. So I'm painting them 2 coats with white paint.
So in here I have some watered down paint. So it's nice and watery, probably 2 parts water to 1 part paint. And that's how it looks, it's really watery. And what I'm going to do is, I have it on a kind of loose brush with, it's kind of firm bristly so it can get in, because you want the paint to sit in the low spots and you're going to dab it to get the paint off the high spots. So I'm going to work in sections like this. And then I'm going to dab back like that. And I'm going to work my way around everywhere apart from the Easter eggs. I'm not going to wash those, they're going to get a second coat of paint, and I'm going to put an inlays on those. So just work in small sections and then dab back. Just pulling it back off the top really. I'm also doing the grass, and I'm doing the front as well, so don't worry too much of it. Kind of runs down the front. Just I'm trying to avoid the eggs. Martin's just stuck his hand in the paint. If you want more of it to set, you can apply your paint a little bit thicker. Like I'll show you here. So if you want it a little bit thicker, you can apply your paint a little bit thicker like this, and that will sit differently in your paint like that. And all you do is you go around the whole thing. Don't worry about these drips, we're going to get to these, just we don't want them to dry, so you have to work relatively quickly. I think what I'll do here is I'm going to just start brushing this, only because I don't want all these drips and I don't want it to sit like that. So again, it's just the same process. This is rather a big section I'm working on right now. Oops. Just make sure you're getting your paint. I'm at a funny angle, but I think I'm getting it in all the angles. And you're just kind of doing this with it. I'm not happy with this part here. Put some thicker paint in here. I'm just going to turn it to its side.
And I just continue all over the piece doing the same thing, washing on the wet paint and wiping it off with the dry towel. Okay, so here I am, and what I'm doing is I'm giving my eggs another coat, a generous coat but not too thick, of the white paint, and I'm going to be applying the new IOD Inlays to the eggs. So I'm using the rose chintz, and what I've done is I've cut it into small sections. Don't worry if you think it won't bend round when you put your damp cloth on, like I'm doing here, to pat it down just to, you know, embed it onto the paint. They bend round, so, but you need smallish sections. IOD inlays are not just good for furniture, they're really good for smaller craft projects as well. So on the second egg here, I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm giving it a reasonably good coat of paint, quite generous but not too thick, and this is me just using a damp cloth just to embed my inlay onto my egg. Now I'm going to go around and do all the rest of my eggs. Okay, so what I go on to do now is I apply some transfers. Here you can see me applying the bee from the brocante transfers, and I think I use another couple of flowers from there, and I use bits and pieces from the Painted Leaf floral transfer as well. So this is a really good way of using up your transfers on smaller projects, and because I do a lot of furniture, I usually have quite a lot of little pieces and parts left over. Just making sure that everything's burnished down and it's stuck to the piece nicely. And for the rest of this part, you'll just see me going round and applying transfers to the side, both sides, and a few more to the front. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I've got some black paint and an artist sponge, and what I'm doing is I'm just touching over the top of the Harper mould letters that we've painted over the top, just to give them some highlights and lowlights, just so they stand out on the piece. So the only really important thing in this part of the process is to make sure that you don't push down too hard on your letters. You're just kind of keeping your sponge at a right angle to your letters, and you're just touching over the top of them, just so that only the fronts are being highlighted. And that's all I'm doing here. Okay, so here I am, just with a moist cloth, removing my inlays, making sure they're damp so I can peel them off. And I go ahead and I do this to all my eggs and reveal the design.
So I've got a little bit of gold embossing, and I'm right at the very end of what I've got left, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring out the details on this with this. The next thing I'm going to do is, and I've only got a tiny little bit left, is I'm just going to rub some gold along the egg that was the polystyrene egg, and I'm going to fix in there, and I'm going to show you how in a minute. I've popped a couple of like artificial flowers in there. I'm going to bring out some of the detail on the carrot, and I'll just reach around and do the carrot behind us. And I'm just going to slightly touch here and here of the black with the gold, just here and there, not like, I'm not making it all gold, just giving it a little sort of highlight. There, just a wee bit of a touch up with that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dip my brush in some white wax, and I'm just going to kind of bring out some of these details on the flowers, like that. And then I'm just going to get a little bit of gold. And I'm just going to bring out some of this here, just like that. A bit of white wax. And just a little bit of gold around there. And of course, a little bit of white wax on the tail there. And some gold. I think I'll turn it from this side. I've finished the transfer on that side, so it was complete. And the same thing on this side. Bring out the flowers with some white wax. And a little bit of gold. And I think I'm going to call it I'm tempted to kind of maybe do some just here and there, but this is where I get too carried away, so I don't think I will go daft on it. I think that's probably enough. Now, this was the polystyrene egg, and what I had intended by putting it this way, that I'd be able to just pop some artificial flowers in it. However, they weren't sharp enough to stick in the egg, so I've cut them, and I'm just going to put a dollop of hot glue into the egg like that, and then stick these spring artificial flowers in the little cavity like that. And I'll just kind of tidy it up, and then we'll have a wee talk about it. So it's finished. It was a little bit involved. There's quite a few things, but it's not that difficult, not that tricky. All I'll say is when you're doing your moulds, make sure that you're kind of remembering too many thick moulds. You've got to remember where its legs are so that the shape that you're covering doesn't lose any definition. It's a good idea to put sort of stamping in relief, like, you know, like in ears and things like that. That's all I would say. And remember, once you've built moulds around a face, you've got a gap where a nose would be, so you have to remake a nose and things like that. But that's it. I've shown inlays, transfers, moulds, stamping. There's a bit of everything in there, and a few different paint techniques as well. So I'm hoping that this inspires you to go away and make a spring or Easter extravaganza. And if you do make one, post it in the IOD creative group, because I would really like to see them. And I've been Lel from Made by Marley, and I'll see you again next time.